I'm pulling it up now.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fox 10 Talks. 3 p.m. Phoenix, Arizona, USA. I'm Brian Webb here with Trenton Hooker, Michael Obi steering the bus back there, along with Dave, Isabella back here. Our support staff, they are fantastic. And we want to get to some breaking news, though. We've heard about a deadly fire in a news conference going on right now.
Yeah, people are out there right now. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. This is this 15th Avenue? Okay, yeah, let's take a listen.
Our community response members are with them also. They do an absolute fabulous job at getting treatment for these patients, finding them a place. This house is a complete loss. Having some pictures and videos seen of it and being up there, it is I can say 100% loss. This victim unfortunately did lose his life in this house fire.
The firefighter who was hurt, was he or she aiding and helping
yes.
the victim? Obviously fighting the fire, but directly involved in fighting
yes.
the fire and trying to
So he was on the first engine on scene, and he does have burn injuries to what I was talking to him. He does have burn injuries to his arm. He was transported to a local burn unit in stable condition.
I have another piece, sorry, just about this fire in particular. Can you talk about how fast your crews were able to work to put the fire out, considering homes in close proximity were not even touched? It looks like
right. So listening to the report or listening to the radio traffic, we do have a fire station at 32nd Street and Cactus, and we also have one at 40th Street and Bell. Both trucks got here really quick. I can tell you that when crews did arrive, they were met with heavy flames and smoke coming from the interior. And anytime we have situations like this, we are in an offensive strategy, and we continued in that offensive strategy the entire time.
Do you have a sense of how long the fire had been burning by the time you got there?
No, we don't, but we do have...
Yeah, never an easy situation out there for people.
And a firefighter hurt, I mean, often, clearly they're really good at their jobs, and we always hope for the best for them. And it's amazing how little they get hurt in situations like this. Looks like one of the firefighters had a burn battling this fire, and then someone lost their life.
Yeah, we when I was walking into the newsroom a little bit ago, we had Skyfox over this home, and especially the back half of it, I saw just totally black, scorched. So
and just add triple-digit heat to all this, and a long summer ahead. Captain Keller, he talks to the media a lot, and boy, you see these firefighters. Their job is hard enough. You add summertime temps to it. It's just
not easy.
Just
not
tough stuff.
So more on that at 4:00 for sure. But let's bring in Fox 10 reporter Lauren Clark. She joins us from out in the field. Lauren, I want to talk about your story yesterday that you had kind of an unusual day.
Yeah. Hey there, guys. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. It certainly was a very unusual day driving up to Coconino County Jail and speaking to the man, Adam Sheafe, who admitted to me on camera and was not shy about it, that he did in fact kill the New River pastor, Bill Schonemann. Absolutely no remorse during this interview. He cited a very twisted religious motivation as his reason for doing so. And I also tried to press him multiple times if he would take any type of accountability, if he thought he was wrong in any way, shape, or form for taking such a precious, innocent life of a pastor who is beloved by his community, someone who is known for going out and helping others in their time of need, including a woman who was living in her car. He helped her get into a home, get her life back on track, really change and transform her life. That was the type of person Pastor Bill was. Adam told me straight up he had zero regrets and zero remorse.
Lauren, I believe we have that sound bite, so let's go ahead and play that real quick.
And today, will you apologize to Pastor Bill's family?
I will apologize to them in the aspect that I'm sorry that they got caught in the crossfire. Will I apologize for my actions? Absolutely not. I'm defending my father.
Lauren, by father, I guess he means the Lord?
Yes, he means God. There was this very twisted plot that he admitted to. He said Pastor Bill was just one of 14 Christian leaders that he was looking to kill and then crucify trying to send a statement in this twisted belief system that he had. He was actually going to strike in Sedona before he was caught by police. He was actually arrested on robbery charges. And he told me that he had every intention of killing again. And truly, speaking to him just feet away, you could see there just how close we were there. Again, this was someone who was able to look me straight in the eyes, explain exactly what he did in a very cold, lifeless demeanor, best way to describe that. And I really tried to push him in a lot of different directions to see if he would admit to being mentally unwell. He says that he is not. He admitted to me that he had used drugs. I asked specifically, does that impact your mental state? He says no. He also said that he had a good childhood and he was actually not victimized. One of the questions I asked, have you ever been victimized by someone of the Christian faith? And he told me no, and that his family is currently Christian as well. So again, we have a very bizarre case. We even had the sheriff of Maricopa County say in a press conference, this is the most bizarre case he has ever dealt with in his, I believe, 40 years of experience. So certainly a very bizarre case, but I also, again, just want to go back and highlight and center the victim here, Pastor Bill, a beloved man in the small New River community. He was also described as a mechanical genius. He loved working on trucks. This was a family man, someone who loved his church and his community. He lived there in New River for several decades. This has shaken New River community to their absolute core. This is a community that would always leave their doors unlocked, their cars unlocked. That has changed completely now after this case. So just absolutely heartbreaking.
Hey, Lauren, I wanted to ask you real quick because, you know, when obviously we're covering stories like this and we try to be as objective as we can to talk about the facts, but, you know, you've been out there on this one from the start, really breaking this story. And you've got to know that community. You've got to know that church community that Pastor Bill had, his congregants. Can you talk about just that experience of you're getting to know these people, you're getting to see the aftermath as police were really trying to hunt for that killer, and then you're sitting across from the person who says that they did it. What's going on through your mind as you know this story and you're reporting on it?
Yeah, I mean, it truly is a unbelievable feeling, and just being that close to someone who's admitting to truly a depraved type of behavior. I was even kind of noticing just a little bit my hands shaking. It's not a normal type of human conversation to have. In fact, so much so, I even asked him point blank, a lot of people are going to hear this and think that this is only the work of a depraved mind. Are they right? And of course, he said no to that. It truly is unlike any type of interview. And I've done a lot of different interviews with a wide gamut of people. One of the great things about being a reporter is that you get to truly view the human experience. You get to see the love and compassion humans can have and the change they can bring about in such a positive way. Well, this is the other spectrum of that, where you get to see the depraved, truly evil, best way to describe it, nature of some human beings and what they can do to others. And you have to know that people like that, unfortunately, do exist in our world and even right here in our community.
Yeah, you were staring into the eyes of evil, no doubt about it. What do we? Did you hear any legit? I don't even want to say legit. Did you hear him give any real motive behind this? And did he talk about what was with the crucifix-like way that he left the body?
Yeah, you know, again, this was all religiously motivated and his twisted view. And I don't want to give too much of a platform for his twisted views here, but you know, he truly believed in a religious sense that those who follow Jesus or lead others into following Jesus need to be punished in some way. So that was the message he was trying to send out through his actions. But when I really would try to press him with things, his face would almost kind of be a little bit distorted in a certain sense of the word. And he would, instead of answering some things directly, just pivot back into this religious tangent. And I would have to interrupt him, ask another direct question. And I think he was getting a little agitated with me because of that. But I wasn't going to allow him to take over this time and just use it as a platform to go through his religious kind of talking points here. I really wanted to try to ask about accountability, ask specifically if there was any regret or remorse, which he said no to many times. I also wanted to try to see if there was a specific reason why he would hate those of the Christian faith. And I was surprised to learn that nothing, according to him, happened in his childhood where he was victimized by someone who was Christian. I was kind of surprised to hear that. I was expecting to kind of hear about that. It's odd to have so much hatred when there's not a connection like that.
Yeah.
He
Lauren,
said he was raised in this way.
we've got less than 2 minutes left. Real quick, I just want to hear, obviously, there is a human being, a life that was taken in this, Pastor Bill. I know you've been in contact with his family, but can you talk about, really quick, just their reaction to all this? Do they feel like they're going to get justice in this case?
Yeah, well, that is their main focus, and making sure no one else gets hurt as a result. I was able to reach out to his son before this interview aired, and I, explained to him this really tricky balancing act that we have to do sometimes as journalists, right? Where we have to work to get the information, but also make sure that we are being really, really mindful of those who are victimized as well. And in his thoughts of just kind of going through this absolute pain and turmoil, he's just shocked that this man is able to have a device in jail and be able to communicate in this way. And they're really concerned that he's enjoying this time in the spotlight. That's very deeply concerning for them. And they're also very deeply concerned over him perhaps trying to gain some followers, which is why we're being really mindful not to go into too much of the depths of his religious beliefs as a result of that. Just trying to kind of navigate this responsibly.
Lauren, good stuff today. We hate to cut you off. I know I have another story today about cell phone.
Welcome back to Fox 10 Talks. We have a very special guest here today, Susan Key, a Korean War historian, on a very, very special anniversary. Today marks the start of the Korean War.
That is correct.
75 years ago today.
Yes, on June 25th, 1950, the North Korean communists invaded South Korea, starting the Korean War.
Wow.
Talk to us about why this is still resonates with you. You left there when you were 9, you told us. But your parents survived that time.
Yes, so my parents experienced the Korean War. I was born after the Korean War to a free nation of South Korea, thanks to America and its veterans who fought for us and saved us from communism. So my parents have a very interesting story. My father's family come from Pyongyang, North Korea, the capital of North Korea. My grandfather was a very wealthy landowner. He had vast amount of land. And so when Kim Il-sung took power as kind of the communist puppet dictator installed there by Russia in 1948, the first thing they did as communists, what did they do? Confiscate your property.
Land, right.
So my grandfather's land that had been in their family for many generations was totally confiscated. They lost everything. But what really drove my grandfather's family to leave and flee from North Korea was that the communists started killing Christians. We were Christian. We had become Christian as a result of American missionaries that came to North Korea in 1900. Can you believe it? My great-grandmother was converted to Christianity. So my grandfather and my father and his siblings, they felt, wow, we can't stay here. This is hell on earth. They're killing Christians. We may have lost every earthly belonging, but we're not going to lose our faith in Christ. So they fled to South Korea months before the war. They didn't know the war would break out and that North Korean communists would invade South Korea.
What a smart move. I mean, it's such
I think it was God's grace.
Well,
I think it was by the hand of God that our family was directed. And if we hadn't become Christian, maybe we would have stayed there. Maybe we wouldn't have had a reason to be so threatened. And because we were Christian and we wanted to keep our faith in Christ, nothing else was worth losing. I mean, everything else was okay, losing, but we weren't going to lose our faith. I'm sorry to say that wrong. But so they came down, and my father enlisted in the South Korean army to fight against communists during the war.
Wow.
And here's another second hand of God in this, because my father had just taken an English class somewhere in Korea, just random class, after he had fled to South Korea, not knowing the war was going to start. Well, the minute he gets into the South Korean army, they find out he speaks a little English. He gets attached to an American unit as a Katusa, Korean augmentation to the U.S. Army. So then he was under the covering and the experienced military leadership of Americans. So he was attached to the 3rd Infantry Division of the U.S. Army. And so I really see the hand of God in saving not only our family, but so many Koreans who fled North Korea when communism took over.
Yeah.
And of course, if America didn't come, where would we have any protection and safety to go to? It's because Americans saved South Korea that we have been able to have a future and thrive. And look at South Korea
Look at South
today.
Korea now, yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I just want to talk about a little bit of those details that some of our viewers might not know, but the newly formed United Nations that South Korea obviously brought their case to show the North Korean invasion, asked for that call of help. America responded. And am I wrong that it was roughly like 1.7 million U.S. service members did serve?
Yes, about
Korea.
1.9 million
1.9.
American service members served.
Yeah.
Including
One
your
of which
grandfather.
was my grandfather.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Would you thank him for me? Is he still alive?
He's not. But I was very lucky when I was a boy just to have his experience to talk about Korea with going over there. And he fought 51, 52 over there. And just hearing his stories of his fellow service members in the Army and the Marines who lost their lives, and really how that got to be called, obviously, the Forgotten War.
What do you think about that?
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Yes.
I bet not.
And none of the veterans like it.
Yeah.
Because it's actually a victory.
Mm.
And here's why. The UN answered the call to defend this country of South Korea, along with 16 fighting countries. because they wanted to stop communism in South Korea. North Korea had already fallen to communism, but they weren't going to do that or allow that to happen because Americans had set up free elections for South Korea, and South Korean people had already elected the first democratic president. Will of the people. And so the fact that eventually, after the Incheon landing, the Americans were able to push the North Koreans out of South Korea, and they saved South Korea. It was done by end of September. After the Incheon landing, a few weeks after that, they took Seoul back, and they pushed North Koreans out of South Korea. It was done at that time. But MacArthur got a little bit overconfident that the Chinese wouldn't get involved, and so he pushed our American troops and UN forces further in, which threatened the Chinese. And so they entered the war, pushing us back down. But the original objective of the war was to stop communism in South Korea. South Korea was saved. It is a victory.
And without China, North Korea would probably not be here today.
Right. But saving North Korea was never the original objective of the United Nations resolution to send fighting units to Korea. It was to save South Korea. That objective was met. So why should this be a forgotten war?
Yeah.
This was a victory. I'm here. Millions of Koreans are here. Look at South Korea today. It is one of the greatest alliances that the United States has. And so I really want to reframe this for Americans and Koreans that this shouldn't be a forgotten war. This is absolutely a victory. Look at South Korea.
When I think of South Korea today, I think like so much talent coming out of there in every aspect of life, whether it's intelligence, athletics, entertainment. I mean, it's
K-pop.
just, right? K-pop. I mean, come on.
Well, I
and
think,
that's such a small country
And the
for
cutting edge of
right.
tech.
But
Right.
how could
True.
any of that have come out of Korea without Americans' willingness to fight against communist tyranny?
Yeah.
None of that was possible if Americans did not come to fight for us. And so that is the true greatness I feel of America, is their willingness to die, to shed blood for someone else's freedom.
Yeah.
And as long as I have breath, I will thank America. And I think American veterans of any war need to hear that it matters not what the political outcome was of the war. What matters is that you were willing to give your life for another to be free. And that is the most noble thing a human being can do on this earth. So I will always sing America's praises.
Well said.
You're a good You're a good
Thank
spokesperson.
God for America.
One thing I do remember my grandfather talking about, where I also learned about this a little bit in college, but with the effect that it had on American service members who were taken prisoner, the POWs, and just what certain torture that they were at the hands of the Chinese and also the North Koreans. But I remember also learning in college just about the brainwashing that happened, the psychological torture that happened, where that was, at least by some of the military and then also the government standard, of a little bit of a dark stain on America, where there was an effort, at least at the time in the 50s, to push some of those service members aside to kind of downplay what they experienced. But I know so much of that came to light in the decades that followed after, where they didn't want to be forgotten. They wanted their stories told about what they had to endure, what they had to sacrifice. And I just find that struggle remarkable, that story remarkable.
I actually interviewed and met for several years ex-prisoners of war. These veterans were fighting in North Korea. They were captured and miraculously survived the horrific conditions of the POW camps in North Korea. It was not a POW camp by Geneva Conventions at all. It was a death camp. They did not give them any medical care. And as you can imagine, these guys, when they're fighting in battles, they're wounded and they're captured as prisoners. They're going to need medical care. They were given no medical care. Many of them died of gangrene infections and just eventual death from their wounds. In terms of food, there wasn't any. North Korea has always been a very stark place in terms of being able to feed people. And at this time during the war, these prisoners of war were given millets.
Wow.
A millet is a seed you give to birds. And they would boil that and give you a small cup, and that would be it for the day.
Crazy. I can't help but think
Yes.
of where we are at today.
Yes.
And countries like the U.S. are moving toward more isolationism, including Ukraine versus a communist country. for starters. What are your thoughts about where, and not just America,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like many countries are moving back to let's protect ourselves first and the world can worry about itself.
Well, I think I'm not a politician and I
Mhm.
don't know world politics that well. I would say that it's important for a country to be strong first. Because I think so for so many decades, so many countries have taken advantage of America, whether it was tariffs or defense expenses for Europe or other parts of Asia. So even though we were saved during the Korean War, I also know how, as an American, things should be fair. And so if we are paying for defense of other countries, those countries also need to be paying for part of that. And I think Korea was one of those cases they were talking about where Korea needs to pay for some of the defense that U.S. is providing. So I think there needs to be fairness. There needs to be a sense of taking care of your own country before you can take care of others. And I think that is not selfish. I think that's logical. So, you know, there's a lot of sides and nuances to that, and
Sure.
it's not an easy
Sure, you're right.
answer to provide.
But that was good.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got about a minute left,
Yes.
Susan. Today, obviously, the 75th anniversary, the
Mhm.
start of the Korean War. What's the message that you want to give to people at home about how important this mark is for people?
You know, I think it's important for us to know our history. It's important for us to learn the stories of our veterans and to understand what happened in our history so that we can appreciate today what we have been given by them, and so that we can defend what they have fought for in the future. And I think one of the very important programs here in Arizona that I like to highlight is the Imprints of Honor. Imprints of Honor is a nonprofit organization here for high school students to meet veterans and interview their stories and preserve their stories. And it is such a dynamic and important program because you can't learn from a textbook what veterans can teach you. And I certainly have learned from interviewing veterans myself that they have values of love of country and what things are worth fighting for. And so those are really character education, really significant things that we can instill in our youth, in younger generation, that will really
back there just because she feels closer to, I don't know. Oh, we're back? Are we back?
We're back.
Thanks for the heads up, Michael Obie.
That's what 3-2-1 stands for.
I thought you were
Who
just
knew?
working on your ABCs and your
I
1,
just
2,
know
3s.
10 for Fox 10. That's it.
ABCs.
Fox 10 investigator Justin Lumps here.
Hey,
Something.
how's it
I mean,
going?
the big dog
Right.
is here, right?
Yes.
And guess who he's
appreciate that.
talking about again today?
I can take a few guesses.
The
but,
gift that never stops
Well,
giving.
usually, yeah, when I'm on here,
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
it's usually regarding one
You've got
person.
to have
but-
Lori Daybell, Vallow Daybell fatigue.
Oh yeah, we talked about that today. Me, Ron, and Celeste about burnout, and you get that throughout 5 years, of course, while you're juggling other stories. So it happens. But you just get through it and do what we're supposed to do, which is report on developments. And this latest development is regarding a motion for a new trial.
Yeah,
Wow.
I lost. Let me do it again.
And she's trying to tell the judge that, hey, it was because I was sick.
Yeah, remember
I need a redo.
the delay, the multiple delays to choose a jury was because she was sick, but there was not enough detail, according to Judge Boreski, that they needed to put a pause on things. They had to get this trial going. They had already sent jurors back twice. She says that tests had come back that she had a viral infection and needed antibiotics, and she was never 100% healthy. She claims in this new motion that there was a time where she was in a holding cell at the courthouse, because the inmates have to wait to be transported back to jail. So they don't all just go one at a time. They all come together in the morning. They wake up at 4 a.m. They all get brought back to the respective jails at the end of the day. And so she says she was there for 6 hours with no blanket or medicine. She was, had been vomiting prior to that. And so that's the basis of this claim, this motion. And also the argument, she says that he was not impartial. He was not fair, denied a lot of objections, and just, that it's her claim. And it's interesting because she wants to get back to Idaho as well and get the sentencing done, yet she asked for a new trial at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but we're not surprised at this point.
Well, and with this too, I think people might just be asking, doesn't she just know it's over? Like it's done. I mean, where do you think that comes from? That drive that she has to not admit that it's over. Defeat is here.
I think if you're a convicted child killer and you have never, had accountability or admitted to what you've done, and then you choose to represent yourself in court, there are definitely some signs that you like to be in the spotlight. I think it's very clear. The judge in the Idaho case, when she was sentenced, said that she had a personality disorder and a case of hyper-religiosity. That was a diagnosis by a doctor. So he wasn't just saying those things. That wasn't the judge's opinion. He had said that you have been diagnosed with this and you have shown no remorse. So you get some hints into her personality and what we've seen in her demeanor. So yeah, she likes to be in the spotlight. At the same time, she does strange things like motion against media coverage when it seems like she wants the media coverage. Right now, we're covering her.
So Husky Mom does have a question.
And the test came back that she had an infection. She did sound congested at one point, but the judge just felt that she was good enough to start the trial. That she had, a little bit of sickness, but not.
Right.
She didn't have COVID. She didn't have something where she needed to stay away from everyone and be treated. That was the case.
Back to more of the mental part. If she had these diagnoses and she clearly wasn't right, at least according to the judge in Idaho, was there a point where this was maybe not going to happen and they were just going to say that she's making bad decisions by reason of insanity or whatever other category it might fit into?
Well, at one point, it was the question of her competency. Competency is a low bar. She met that mark. It was her past public defense in Arizona that called for her to have a mental health evaluation, the Rule 11 motion. She went through that. She came out clear. And then the new group of public defenders said, well, she wants to represent herself, and we are fine with that. So as competency means just understanding the charges against you. Doesn't mean you have to be very smart, understand how to be a lawyer. You just need to understand the situation that you're in court, in the case, and that's what it is. And she dealt with this in Idaho, too, and had to go to a state hospital. So that it's been a long saga. Mental health, like you said, and just her personality. That's why it makes this case so fascinating, because people want to see what she does next, even though this is basically over until we're just waiting for the sentencing at this point.
So we have the sentencing portion, and then obviously the appeals process for her with her different charges, Arizona and Idaho. But when can we finally say that's it? She's in prison.
Never.
Yeah, July 25th, the sentencing for both murder conspiracy convictions regarding her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, and then her ex-nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux. So once that's done, there's about 30 days of a time frame, and that's when she'll be picked up, extradited to Idaho, and be booked into the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center, and then that is the goodbye, serving her life term
She
there.
wants to go to Idaho, right? Do we know why that's more appealing to her?
You know, I could guess that it's the conditions at that facility compared to the Estrella Women's Jail. We overheard her whispering by the mic at her desk when they were trying to schedule the sentencing. You know, she said summer in Idaho. That makes it implies summer in Idaho compared to summer in Phoenix. I wouldn't know what conditions are like at the Estrella Jail. I'm sure we could find out what people who have been booked there, what they think.
Well, she'll want to come back here in the wintertime and then go back to Idaho in the summer.
We'll see.
A snowbird, jailbird.
She has 5 life terms in
Delusional
Idaho, 3 consecutive for murdering her 2 children and conspiring in the murder of Tammy Daybell. So the sentencing really, it's just a formality, you know, here in Arizona, just getting that done, but also for the victims to make their impact statements too.
Can you talk a little bit about, you know, where the family's at with this? I mean, Kay Woodcock, I mean, obviously you had a great interview with them multiple times, but especially after that verdict came, feeling like they had their day in court, they had justice in this case, but where are they at with this?
I think they're ready to say goodbye and ready to make their victim impact statements. You're going to hear from Kay Woodcock. She's the sister of Charles Vallow. She's also the biological grandmother of J.J. Vallow, who was murdered by Lori in Idaho. So she has gone through everything. Imagine being a key witness in 3 trials. She has done that. She was not a trial witness in this latest trial, but for her, I think you can see the weight off her shoulders. And for Brandon Boudreaux, we were the ones that interviewed him after this guilty verdict, and you know the bullet missed him by inches. So he's been through a lot, and he's just relieved that he got his day in court and got to see justice play out.
Can I back you up here? And let's say you're writing the movie script for this. I mean, what was the purpose of all of this? Death and destruction? Was it religion? Was it love? Was it a little craziness? Was it a little bit of all of it?
I think you have both. I mean, we heard it in the first trial, money, power, and sex. And you could argue or ask, why didn't these 2 people, we haven't even talked about Chad much here, but Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, why didn't they just get divorced with their spouses? If they were so in love with each other, wanted to be together, you could get a divorce. But then you bring in the whole life insurance benefit and that motivation. So money is clearly a motive. And then this idea that they fed to each other, that they were going to, you know, lead everyone into the new Jerusalem when the apocalypse came. So they really had this vision that they could decide who was chosen. They could decide who was a light spirit and a dark spirit, very, very religious, very spiritual, and had gone down this offshoot path that wasn't the LDS religion, the mainstream religion that we know. It was totally not.
I'm only half kidding, getting her and Adam Sheafe in the same room. I mean, when you have crazy far out there religious beliefs, like, do you see the other people as in simpatico with you, or do they just come from different angles?
I'm not very religious, but I think through covering this case, you see how powerful it is. If you buy into some sort of philosophy, an idea, you know, then it depends on the type of person, their mental health, and what they're dealing with, and how they deal with things. That's the tricky part, right?
Yeah.
How do they let it get this out of control based on just religion?
And
I don't know.
You've obviously been following this from the start for 5 years. I know you've repeatedly asked Lori for an interview to sit down with you. She's either ignored it or declined it, whatever. You know, as we've wrapped this up, hopefully she will agree to that. But after everything you've been through, what do you want to know from Lori that you don't know?
I think the simple question is why. Like we're asking right now, because we don't totally know, is why. And I think I want what I want to know is if she understands that she did do this. She's been convicted of it.
It's accountability.
There's no the accountability part. There's no any other excuse that she's made publicly. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, the evidence is there. The autopsies say everything. Her children were found in the ground. These were manners of death were by homicide. Who do you blame? So it's like, I think she has to be pressed on those facts.
Yeah, you hear about adults killing adults all the time on true crime, but when the kids are involved, her own kids, I mean, boy, we go beyond the pale there, and she just isn't owning up to any of it.
No, she never has.
So after 5 years, what haunts you the most with this entire case? What leaves you where you're thinking about it one day and you're like, that was just so horrible?
I think when I was in trial in Idaho and listening and seeing the graphic evidence regarding the children and the way their remains were found, I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the courtroom. You hear people crying. It was dark. I just remember seeing, things on the projector screen and feeling emotional and feeling that heavy, like, darkness.
And you're a father.
Yeah. And I started covering this case, reporting on this before I was. So it totally changed my mindset, I think, or improved it in how I covered the story. But yeah, it's been a long time. So there's some things that are just a blur. But yeah, it's been. I'm ready for this to move on. And we're always got other stokes in the fire and are investigating other stories.
Yeah.
Like the sober living crisis, for one, that's been about 2 years, 2.5 years almost. So that's important to us. But this, it's sort of like, and you are one of a few people have asked in a joking way, like, what are you going to do without Lori Vallow? It's like, it's, and then I think about that. I'm like, wow, it's really ending. It's bittersweet. That is coming to a close, but I'm also ready to, do other things.
Sure.
And that's important to me. But not everybody does get that type of story where they just kind of chew on it for 5 years nonstop.
I think Lori didn't want to do an interview with Justin because he had her dead to rights better than anybody else.
From the start.
My invitation is still out there.
All right.
Yes.
Justin, good work, man.
Yeah,
all right, man. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a break. More Fox 10 Talks, and we're talking the NBA with Richard Saenz, and see if Michael Obi's going to add anything other than his silly countdown.
Hey, you're watching Fox 10 Talks. We have a special guest, as always, Richard Saenz in the house. Big talker in the sports world happened in Chicago yesterday. 7th inning, White Sox, D-backs, second baseman Ketel Marte. He was obviously in the game. Fan of the White Sox, made some derogatory comments about his mother, who had recently passed away in a tragic accident, and he became emotional with that. Richard, can you explain that for us?
Yeah, it was, you know how fans are, right? You're going to get heckled, and it happens, but you don't cross a certain line. And I think that's what happened last night, in Chicago. And look, like I said, fans are going to heckle you, but you don't talk about a guy's mother passing, and Ketel, it hurt him, and it was cool to see Torey Lovullo stand up for him, his manager. They pointed the guy out. He had words with him. They kicked the guy out. He's been banned.
Good.
So that's good to see. And it was, and now today, you have a negative story, right? You have a negative thing where this fan was heckling Ketel Marte, talking about his mother who passed away in a car accident back in 2017. And then you see this right here where the White Sox say, look, the baseball family, the White Sox community supports Ketel Marte,
That's
which
great.
I think is pretty cool. And so a positive is coming out of such a negative moment last night. But he was obviously shaken up, and Ketel Marte and his manager, Torey Lovullo, are very close. It's almost like a father figure to him. And you got to remember, like a lot of these guys, these Latin players, they come to a different country. They're from the Dominican. They're from Venezuela. They're not only trying to take their game to the next level, they're eating different foods. They're learning a new language. They're away from their families and stuff. And so, they get a certain bond with coaches and managers like Torey Lovullo.
It's a
and Ketel
community.
Marte. Exactly.
I mean, I was out at Surprise Stadium watching Cactus League on Friday, and just seeing those guys from the DR, and how they all come together as community. I mean, amazing. And like you said, it's a huge leap to come to the U.S., totally foreign country.
And mourning, you never know when morning's going to hit you. I mean, someone
Right.
just might say, good morning to
Right.
you, and you start bawling because
Exactly.
you stuff it all inside.
Yeah, and then when you're a team, right, and you guys work together, like us here at Fox 10, we're a team. I care about these guys. Like if something happens to
Me?
Brian or Trenton, yes, I love
Even
you guys.
you.
It's
Even
true. It's true because we spend more holidays together than we do with our families when
Very
you think
true.
about it. And so you develop this bond with a brother from another mother, right? And then you see him hurting, and then so that was cool to see his teammates kind of. And at the time, we didn't know exactly what was happening, right? And earlier in the game, because this D-backs team has been through a lot. Say what you want about the Arizona Diamondbacks, you can't say they're not tough physically and mentally because they've been through a lot, on the field, right? You've got one injury, 4 guys with Tommy John surgery, pitchers, you got one injury after another. Even in the game yesterday, Ildemaro Vargas, who got called up and was playing great, got hit in the foot. They find out he's got a fractured bone in his foot, and you're thinking, man, this team just can't catch a break. So at first I was like, is he crying because of that? And then you find out why. And then you find out how the D-backs handled it and how they rallied around him. And it turns out to be a pretty cool, moment
ending.
after such a bad incident.
And like you were telling us, he had that manager support. He had that teammate support on the mound. He was able to finish the game last night. Pretty amazing to step it up.
I know. Yeah, he went to the clubhouse for a minute, kind of maybe collected his thoughts, got his emotions back in check, came back, but was still visually upset, but finished the game. And that's why, I'm telling you, say what you want about these guys, but you can't say they're not tough. And I get it. Fans want to go out there and they want to interact with players. And unfortunately, the White Sox are horrible this year. There was hardly anybody there. That's why you could hear the guy, So, but you don't
Don't make it
cross a
personal.
certain line.
Yeah. Well, and we've obviously talked about for years about the fan culture and how that can play in. And, with your career history and seeing back to how fans have always been, but do you feel like a little bit of that social media trash talking that gets into it, that people kind of bring that into real life, and this is a result of that?
Exactly, because you have a lot of guys sitting behind their laptop just saying whatever they want to get some attention and get a rise out of somebody. But this time, like you mentioned, it happened in real life. It happened, face to face. And I think it's going to mess it up for true fans, right? Because one of the great things about, like you were talking about spring training or whatever, is being able to get up close and personal with these players and have them sign your autograph and say, hey, man, I really like the way you play. And maybe have them say something encouraging to you that would motivate a young kid to stay in the game of baseball. But when you have moments like this, now there's going to be more security, and during COVID, you had a lot of guys doing interviews over Zoom, and it was limiting the access we had as journalists to these athletes to be able to relay certain stories to our audience. And these are the moments that I think are going to mess it up for everybody.
Hey, let's pivot to the sport of basketball.
Yeah.
What I've been reading in the game of the behind the scenes kind
Sure.
of trading here and there that the Suns were kind of taken by the Houston Rockets last week.
Yeah,
this week,
well,
last week.
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Every grade that we've seen has the Rockets having a higher grade, basically winning this trade, right? But I also want to make sure we keep in mind that it's not over yet, right? This trade could lead to other trades for the Phoenix Suns. It's still a work in progress, is what I'm trying to say. If you look at it right now, paper on paper, you know, the Rockets get KD, one of the best scorers in the game, and didn't give up a lot of their assets they feel were extremely valuable. I mean, Jalen Green, though, was a starter. Dylan Brooks was a starter and a defensive mind. So that's two starters two out of five guys that were
Right,
starters
okay.
for the second. And then all these picks, but KD is KD, right? And the Rockets did feel like he was the guy that can get them over the hump. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But first reaction, the Rockets.
Kind of like
got the
when we
best.
got Michael Obi.
We had to,
director.
we had to trade two live trucks, my firstborn, and a couple other things, you know.
Yeah.
We grade that
My
in
contract
F.
was slashed in half.
Exactly.
So Little Philosophy has a question for Richard. Do you see Booker being traded for Zion?
No, not at all. But you know, when you see a guy like KD get traded, right, you're thinking, wow. You know, that's a big move. But I think that the Phoenix, great question. I think the Phoenix Suns want to build around Devin Booker, right? And I think they want to get more defensive. They want to get tougher, right? And that's why I think Dylan Brooks was a good addition to this team, because he's one of those guys that you want on that wall. You need on that wall, right? He's one of them guys like, okay, when things get hairy, get behind him and be like, let's go get him. You know what I mean? And when you think about it, most winning teams have those kind of guys, the Draymond Greens, the enforcer kind of guy. Like, hey, you know, somebody says, hey, you're not going to mess with Devin Booker. You know what I mean? You know, so you need that kind of guy. So I think the Suns are trying to get tougher. They're trying to get more defensive minded, and I think that's going to be you know, what they do in the coming days, even in this draft.
Yeah.
Any where are we? 10th pick?
10th and 29th. They got the 10th pick from the Rockets, right? In this pick, along with 5 second-round picks over the years, right? So they went from having 2 picks in this draft, 10 and 29, to now having 4 picks, right? So they had 29 and 59. Now they got 10, 29, 52, and 59. So they got 4 picks, 2 today in the first round. I'm thinking the pick will be 10th pick. If you know, everybody goes their normal time, they get around 5 minutes to make the pick. Between 6 and 6:30, the Suns will be on the clock at number 10. But who knows? They could trade that 10th pick with a player, package up other picks to get a guy that they feel can play right away. And that seems to be Matt Ishbia, the new owner's MO, is like, forget about picks and developing guys and waiting for a couple years. Let's get guys that are proven products in the NBA now that could help us win now. And that's why I think they gave up so many picks to get KD.
Okay.
Obviously didn't work out. Now
Building
they got
some of that grit and strength that he
like we didn't
talked
just
about.
pluck Trenton Hooker off the street.
exactly.
We
I thought we
knew
did,
we knew the guy
we
could
I remember
bring
it
it.
differently.
We
but-
scouted you for about 5 years. You didn't even know.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's unnerving,
don't
but
they have, like-
reassuring at the same
Exactly.
time.
Don't the
Was that
Suns
my-
have like 7 shooting guards right now?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
We got to do something.
Guards,
We can't have a
guards,
bunch of
guards.
6'3"
You know,
guys.
Michael Obi with a great comment. He's like, yeah, they have a lot of shooting guards right now. But that is my point. If you look at the roster now, it doesn't look balanced. But when's the next game?
Yeah.
You know, we haven't even had the draft yet. We haven't had the
All
NBA
right.
Summer League. It reminds me, I've told the story a couple of times. You guys have seen my MG, right? My Roadster. I was getting it painted, and I made the mistake of going to the body shop while they were painting it, and I get there, and it's taken apart. The bumper's off, and I'm like, oh my God, what did they do to my car? Because it was in the middle of it. Yeah, and I drove off, and I'm like, oh my God, like they ruined
Never
my
see a car full naked, man.
Yeah, never see
never
a
go
team
full naked.
full. You know what I mean? This is still the work. The pieces are here. You got the fender over here, the headlights over here, but.
All right,
by the
all right.
The season comes around, they'll put it back together.
But to Michael's point, I'm repeating myself.
Sure.
The Suns to me are like when I look in my closet
That's
and
the
I've
guy-
got
that's
10
Michael,
blue
right?
shirts in there. Like,
Yeah.
why do I keep buying the same blue shirt over and over again?
Well, that's
We've
why you're
got
not the
a blue-
GM of the
creature of
Phoenix
habit,
Suns.
Webb.
Neither am I. And that happens to me too. Like, hey, how come I haven't worn that shirt in a while? Then I wear it, and I'm like, oh, the collar's jacked up.
That's what it
That's
was.
why I haven't worn it in a while.
But I still don't have underwear on. Yeah.
Hey, I have a question for you, Richard. I'm
Yes.
going to circle back to poor fan behavior, but I have a theory on how to solve poor fan behavior.
Oh.
I got it from a dear close friend of mine, Big Cat. I think we should allow athletes to fight one fan per year.
Yes.
Put it
You
on
just
pay-per-view.
get one.
Put it up, yeah. Yeah, and I would nominate that fan in Chicago,
Sure,
right? But
sure.
yeah, no, we wouldn't want to promote violence. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because these fans think they're like untouchable, and just because the
Right.
guy is making millions, you can just say whatever you want to him. I mean, come on. You know?
I thought Mike was going to suggest, the Lori Vallow belt she was wearing in court that shocked her.
It's not a
Really.
championship belt.
Exactly.
That's true.
But I think put that fight on pay-per-view.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Should we talk real quick? How much time do we have, Mr. Obi? Real quick about we were talking about all the injuries to the pitchers. I mean, is this unusual stuff? Like I heard this was way above normal.
It's very strange because the Dodgers have, if not the same amount of injuries as the D-backs, more to their pitching staff. But that's the difference. The Dodgers have the capital to kind of make up for that, where the D-backs don't. So yeah, it does seem to be oddly increased.
We're just overworking. They don't get a break anymore.
Well,
What-
and that's the thing is a lot of guys, and that's the mentality, right? The Mamba mentality, no off days and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But sometimes the ACL or the Achilles is like, I can't. So I'll never forget Emmitt Smith, one of the greatest running backs of all time, the all-time leading rusher when he played for the Cardinals. I asked him, I was like, what's your secret, to your longevity, to your consistent success? And he said, knowing when to shut it down. He goes, knowing when to take care of your body. And he was like one of the first guys that I really saw that would invest a lot in taking care of his body. And another guy that's played for a high level for a long time is Chris Paul.
Yeah.
He talked about the millions he invested in his body because, like, this is my tool. This is what I need to be successful. So that's why Brian has so many blue shirts, because he's investing in himself.
Yeah,
Hey
he
guys,
does
we
think
got
about
1
his
minute
body.
left.
Yeah.
Richard, do we have a Fox 10 Talks coming up later?
We do. We have a Fox 10 Talks coming up at
Look at that
6:30.
promotion.
Fox 10 Talks Sports, the fun stuff, and that
Is
we'll
my-
be breaking down the draft. And
That's going to be good.
Yeah, and so hopefully the pick will be done before then, but if not, after or around that time. And I talked to our Suns insider, Flex from Jersey, who talked about different options. Like, for example, don't be surprised if the Suns say, we're not going to have the 10th pick. We will trade with some team that has the 17th or 18th pick, but they'll give us extra picks for us to move back. It all depends on how the draft board plays out. If the first 9 picks go and they're like, oh man, there's still 4 guys that we like here, we can move back, get another pick. So you never know.
Just no more guards.
Is Michael Obi getting paid by the promotion department now?
He's good.
Double,
He is.
double dipping.
Yeah,
I would
That's
be
against
all
the
for
rules.
it.
He's our number 1 draft pick this
He
year.
is all right. All
Yeah.
right. We'll go with that.